And in the meantime, of course, I still had designs wanting to, you know, make my first Holy Communion and see the sacraments. So when we moved to the south side, which was at Archer and Kilbourne Avenue.
Can you remember all this?
Archer and Kilbourne and 55th, which crosses diagonally across that section. It was possible to go to catechism classes on Saturday. And so that is what I did. And of course, we walked. And we didn't walk the streets because that would have taken us a little too long. So we used to just cut diagonally across the prairies, which there was quite a vacancy there for miles. There's an occasional couple of houses here and there. And of course, ours was one of the largest homes at that time. My father had built it himself with the help of a gentleman. And it was one of these homes that you buy with the prepared material all cut and planned.
Yeah, Sears was selling them. You could buy a house.
Yeah, I don't believe it was Sears. It was a company by the name. Some company, I can't think of the name. Was also being confirmed. And so from there on, of course, there were little parties that the young folks had, which we all participated in. And he was a very sedate, respectful young man. And of course, my girlfriend, who at that time was Emma Neubauer, close friend. I had Martha Heimbuch rather, and Anna Heimbuch and Clara Heimbuch as the other friends, but I was very chummy with Emma Neubauer because they lived just about a half block down the street of where we lived. And so the young man that she was escorted parties with at the time was George Bagley. And so we had some very nice parties, hayride parties, sleigh parties, and the usual parties that young people have at homes.
Drinking.
And of course the church had dances.
You were how old now?
Well, I was then about
16, 17?
I wasn't quite 16 when I met the young man.
Yeah.
And then
then you would have parties at home. When you had these parties at home, were your parents home?
Oh yes, oh yes.
Did they come out in the party? This is a party.
No, they would stay in the kitchen.
They would.
And we had
Well, if anybody got out of line.
the usual parties.
Yeah, spin a bottle and that sort of thing.
Yes, and
Okay.
and
Spin a bottle.
Yeah.
Spin a bottle and play post office.
Yeah, post office. Okay. Yeah. Did you ever play post office?
No, I never played post office.
Never did?
We never got stamped? Oh, you missed something.
Right. And you never played spin the bottle?
No, I think I was, those games were just going out by the time I was about 15.
Well, they
I played spin the bottle once, and then that was it. Nobody was
They were very, very respectful parties.
Oh, yeah.
And we went home at a respectful hour. Well, then it happened to be my 16th birthday that came along. And so the young man invited me to a show at the Chicago Theater. And I don't know why, but I suppose I was just a little bit kind of hesitant about going out with a young man myself, and I said, do you mind if Emma comes along with us? He said, no. So Emma was the third party to see the show at the Chicago Theater.
And that was sort of like your first date, huh?
Yeah.
That was your first date?
Uh-huh.
Well, who paid? In other words, did Emma pay for her own ticket? Or did he pay for both?
I think he did.
Did he? Remember how much it cost to go to the Chicago Theater?
No, I don't recall.
10 cents? 15 cents?
But I think then I was a little bit maybe a little out of order. The next day he asked me for was a show at the Stockyards. Stockyards show. You know, they have the annual show of the 4 Club
4-H.
or something like that.
Yeah, right.
And I wasn't so fond of going to a horse show, and I says, no, I didn't think I wanted to go. And I think I hurt his feelings, possibly.
Well,
I don't remember exactly what happened after that.
Well, you never saw him again?
No, yes I did.
Oh.
But I didn't call him for some reason or other.
You didn't call?
No, I was a little independent. I was the type that just you call me or I never call you.
Well, that's...
So he did finally call, and I said, why didn't I hear from him? He said, well, why didn't you call me? And I said, it's not the place of a girl to call a fellow. It's his place to call a girl. And he said, well, Clara, having a look at it. Well, her first name was Clara. I can't think of her last name. But Clara called John. And I said, well, that's Clara. That's not me.
You called the wrong gal?
No. It was his brother. And, of course, Clara was another girl that I knew and who we occasionally, we had a little sewing club, and she belonged to it. And Clara was John's girl. And so Clara had called John, and I said, well, that's Clara. That's not me. So somehow or other we just kind of drifted apart because of that little situation.
Well, the same thing happens today.
But then we happened to always...
Well, it's never mind. We're going to my personal life.
But then it happened that we always got on the streetcar, the same streetcar every morning, at the same time, and of course we saw each other, but we just never recognized each other particularly.
Didn't even say hello or anything?
No,
Good morning,
no.
nothing? Sure, he was really mad, wasn't he?
So that went on for a while. And then the next interested party I had was through my brother, Alfred. And he was interested in a girl by the name of Julia Cayley. And Julia had a brother by the name of Emil Cayley. And of course, because I was a sister to Al, and of course of the age at that time, like I said, I must have been about 18.
What was Al doing? Was he working?
He was working for the Gottfried Brewery. He had worked for my father for a while, but fathers and sons don't always agree.
Yeah, I know.
And with a little bit of criticism, why it became rather a very trying situation.
Yeah.
So it happened that the same man that got my father into the Gottfried Brewery presented a position of a similar position at the Gottfried Brewery for my brother Al. So Al took him up on it and was employed by the Gottfried Brewery for many years until he retired from the. I think they went out of business then, and then anyway, he worked there for the Gottfried Brewery. Yeah. And of course, because Julie had a brother, why they sort of arranged little parties they had, and he asked if I would like to be escorted by him. Well, that went on for a little while, but not saying anything, but I just wasn't too particular about his way of life. He was a very jolly fellow, but he had other tendencies that did not quite come up to my expectations, so I just...
Well, what were these tendencies?
Oh, I don't want to say that.
Was he aggressive also?
No. He just indulged in liquor a little bit.
He drank too much.
Yes, but he But he was a very congenial young man, and,
Yeah.
he was full of life, and he really was a wonderful fellow to be with in a group, because he was the life of the party.
Was he Irish?
No, German.
What was his last name again?
Cayley.
Sounds Irish.
No, Cayley, Kohle. And so I just thought, well, I wasn't so sure that I would like to be married to anybody, or what we'd say, encourage anybody of that nature. So I just took it upon myself one day to say, Emil, I think you're a very nice young man, but I think I'm too young to keep steady company.
And you're old, how old now?
I was 18 years of age.
18.
Yeah.
Now, tell me one thing. How did your parents participate in these activities? Were they interested? Did you talk to your mother about your
No,
boyfriends?
we never discussed anything. They just observed. But one thing did happen. When I was interested, and of course the young man was interested in us when we were 15, my father was the contender in the situation, and he would say, now, I don't like this idea of young lady keeping company at the age of 15. And my mother would say, well, he's a nice young man, and there's nothing you can say. My father said, okay, if anything happens, it's your fault.
So he ducked out, huh?
So he just laid the blame on my mother.
Yeah.
But it happened that we were very respectful young people, and nothing out of the ordinary did happen.
Yeah. Right.
And I do think, I honestly think, that it was religion that was my background.
Well, tell me, at that stage in your life, what did you think about yourself? Do you think you were pretty, or did you think you were...
I thought I was a very respectful and law-abiding young lady.
Yeah.
And I sort of kept up to those...
and where did you... was it inspired by your religious training? Or
yes, I do think so.
The nuns or the priests?
No, because I had no background. My mother and father at that time did not live up to the Catholic religion, nor did my sister, except my oldest sister.
That was Nettie?
That was Nettie.
Yeah.
But none of the other members of the family.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so I was
then somebody impressed you religiously.
My oldest sister.
Nettie.
Yeah, she had a religious education up to 4th grade, and that's all. Mm-hmm. And that was at Sacred Heart Church and School on 18th and Peoria. Mm-hmm. That was where my folks lived. Mm-hmm. I maybe forgot that I had an accident in that location. That was where I got my injured finger. When we lived on 18th Street near Halstead at that time. Yeah. And I had a godfather that I was very fond of. And he used to visit us regularly. He was a bachelor, and he'd visit us ever so often, and my folks thought a great deal of him. And of course he was appointed godfather of me when I was christened. Mm-hmm. And I happened to be outside, I think I was about 5 years old at the time, and I saw him across the street, and I wanted to run across to greet him. And there happened to be a coal yard about 2 houses away from our house at that time, our apartment we lived in. And there was a truck and a team of horses coming up the ramp at that time. The streets were lower than the streets, because Chicago was a very, what do you call it? It was clay. Nothing but a swamp. Chicago originally was a swamp, and they had filled up the streets in order to really, to be able
above the water level.
Yes. And so some of the houses were built down, and the streets were higher up. And so the business...
the streets were higher up.
Higher up. So was 23rd Street was higher up.
That's interesting. Do you
and
remember...
there was a foundation built for the street of quarry stone.
Yeah. Now, at that time, there were primarily horses.
That's right. No automobiles.
No automobiles.
No.
And you said the streetcars.
And streetcars.
And streetcars.
Yes.
And there's a story around that in the summertime, the horse manure was so thick that it formed a brown cloud over the whole city. Do you remember anything about that?
No.
What did they do about the horse manure?
That was something that somebody just cooked up as a
What did they do about the horse manure in the streets?
Well, I don't know. I suppose
Do you remember?
they took it out to the fields to the gardeners. So that
Do you
after
recall
all,
that
that's what
it
you used.
ever concerned you, or had you had any problems with it?
No, they had street cleaners like we have now.
I
They had
see.
men,
Probably went around
they
a lot
had
more
men
often.
that had little wagons with little brooms and
Yeah.
cleaned it up.
Had a barrel on wheels.
Yeah,
and,
that's right. Yes, on wheels, and that was
And
the
they
way
took care of the horse manure.
That's right. That's
Oh.
right. The street
Right,
had
like
that.
that.
Well, street had that method, the
Yeah.
same as they have today.
Yeah.
And anyway, this horse and the
Who was the mayor of Chicago?
Don't ask me. I can't remember.
No?
I wasn't
That wasn't
interested. I
important.
wasn't interested in politics at that time. Well, anyway, this team of horses came up with the truck of the coal, and I must have gotten too close to the horse, and he trampled. But as they say, he just stopped immediately as I fell under his feet, and all he got was my finger, and I had a scar on my nose. Don't think you can see it now because it kind of eradicated side
Yeah.
sometime. But that was the only injury I had. That horse stood dead still as he trampled on me. And so they picked me up, as I remember, and took me to the corner drugstore on Canal Fort Avenue and Union. And I don't know whether people say that you don't remember things, but as I can remember myself, that it was a corner sink, and that they took me there to wash off the injury, and the pharmacist put on a little piece of wood or some sort of a little piece of something that kept the finger straight and bandaged up. And of course, I guess I lived with that for a little while until they thought that there was time to have it healed. And but possibly wasn't left on long enough, and so the skin gradually, because all they did was pull it together. They didn't make a very clean job of it, and that's why my finger is got a little curve there at the
You
end.
didn't really have any special physical
No,
attention.
no, it was just a drugstore. That was all.
Oh gosh.
And
Nowadays they would take you right to the hospital.
okay. So that was the experience of my youth at that time. I was about 5 years old then. Well, anyway, and this
No,
one-
you're back. You're
Back to the romance.
16, and you had this romance.
No, 18. I'm up to 18 years of age now, don't forget.
Yeah, right.
And I, of course, gave up this young man that was interested, very interested, because he had taken me to, well, they had parties, the family had parties, and I would say that the whole family thought that I was going to be one of the 10. And so it was, so of course he was quite, I would say, put out, but said, "Oh, I guess you don't like me, do you?" I said, "Yes, I do." But I said, "I just think I'm too young to keep steady company." And that was it. So that was our parting there. So I didn't have any particular attraction after that for a while. Whether it was my fault or what, I don't know. But anyway, I think I was close to 20 years of age. And in that time, I just attended the church parties, and I did a masquerade one time, dressed as a little Dutch girl at one of our church parties, which was held on Archer Avenue and Rockwell Street, at the hall in that particular location. And I won a prize. I had wooden shoes and was costumed as a little Dutch girl. And I got a lavalier. I don't know where it is today, but I did get a lavalier as a little prize at the dance. And then from there on, it was now and then maybe I would meet somebody that would take me out for an occasion. But I never kept company, steady company after that.
Now you're 20.
Yeah. So I got a position then with the Franklin Trust and Savings Bank. Now I left the printing company and got this job at the Franklin Trust and Savings Bank on 35th and Michigan Avenue on the south side.
Yeah.
And that was in the area. That was in the area where the arms. What is it?
That's the
hand people.
Yeah,
Armor people lived.
where Armor Institute is now.
No, well then that must be maybe where their residence was.
Yeah.
And they had a beautiful, beautiful 3-story building on Michigan Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to just sort of take occasional walks at noontime and of course observe what went on in that particular area in those homes. And we did observe that those homes had about, at least 3, if not 4, sets of draperies on the windows, and every once in a while you would see a different set of draperies. And I found out later on, when I employed a maid for the family, that she worked for not the Armour family, but the, what was that, the doctor's name, that famous doctor? It's an Irish name. Well, anyway.
Murphy?
Huh?
Murphy?
No, it wasn't
What kind of a
Murphy.
doctor?
He worked at the Mercy Hospital, and they had a large family of 9 children. Well, I found out why these draperies, these many draperies are on those windows. She said, this is what they all did, that they would have their parties once in a year. They'd go to all the different parties, and then once in a year they would celebrate and have parties in the home. And after then, they would have all these draperies up. And after they had the party, they would take them all down and leave only one. Everything was done for one occasion in the year to return the obligation of a party in the homes.
Huh.
And perhaps they had draperies for winter and draperies for summer, but they had these various ones, and they would just take one off and destroy the other ones. Well, anyway, the homes were very interesting when you went by. Well, I don't remember how long I worked there. But what was the reason? I wanted more pay. That's right, yes.
How much were you getting now?
I think I was getting $15
A week.
a week.
That's twice what you start out with.
Yes. So then I thought that, and then I thought I would like to have had a place in the Loop. I thought maybe that it was just a little bit more interesting. Another reason might have been, too, that they had a colored janitor. And this colored janitor was rather, I would say, a little bit too friendly. And he'd always stop at my window, where I had my desk, and talk. And we had a assistant cashier there by the name of Davis. I forgot what his first name was, but it was a southern name. And a cashier by the name of Olson. And Mr. Olson, of course, was the one I would get to, well, both of them gave me dictation, but Mr. Olson would come in the morning, all dressed up. He'd be there for about maybe 1 hour, and the rest of the day he would be at the South Shore Country Club. But poor Mr. Davis would be there all day, well, 7 days in a week, or 6 days in a week.
And they were partners?
They were employed by the Strauss, S.W. Strauss and Company.
Oh, yeah.
The brokers down in the Loop. That was our branch. We were a branch of their what do you call it, their company. And I used to have to make out entries for the money that would come in on the apartments that they would invest in. People would send in $1, $2, or $5, or $10. They would buy these an interest. Stock, in other words, in these apartments on the north side that they built, you know.
These guys built the apartments?
The S.W. Strauss and Company would be,
that's
the contractors. Yeah. And then people would invest in these apartments, and they would send in their money, and we would enter it in books in the bank and give them a receipt for it. So in time they would have a full stock in that apartment.
Right.
Until the crash came. Mm-hmm. And of course that was my job, to make those entries, and of course get that all ready for the board meetings when they had a meeting, making the report, which was a rather tedious job.
Yeah, you just kept entering numbers and names.
Yes, And of course Mr. Davis would get mad once in a while and kind of want to cuss Mr. Olson, but he didn't dare. And
apparently Mr. Olson owed
then, of course, when he would see Mr. what his name was, the janitor, he was a colored fellow, at my window, he said one day to me, Miss Heynen, just let, I would say maybe Jim, talk to you. I said, well, he just comes to my window. I said, no. I said, what can I do? And I guess maybe I didn't like that, that being bothered like that, and I wanted a bit more pay, so I just upped and quit that place. But in the meantime, I made a very close friendship with a bookkeeper there, whose name was Helen Wheeler. And her assistant bookkeeper was Elsie Morgenthaler. Now, this leads up to my romance. And Helen was sort of she was sort of a girl that she liked to tease Elsie, because Elsie was a new, young girl, just her first position, and she'd kind of chide her. And sometimes Elsie would get a little bit peeved, but nevertheless they kept to be friends. And somehow or other, Helen and I became very chummy and friendly, and she was interested in gymnastics and ballet. And Sherman Park in Chicago at Wentworth, I believe it's Wentworth and 55th, had evening classes of gymnasium and ballet.
Gymnastics?
Uh-huh. So we would, after work, I think maybe it was Wednesday evening, or some evening during the week that they had these meetings, we would go and participate in the gymnastics as well as the dancing.
Oh, you took one.
Okay.
Now this is a picture that was taken when all the sisters and brothers were married, and I was the only one still single living at home.
Okay, who is one
Now
of
my older sister was Nettie. Her real Christian name was Johanna, but Grandma Dawn gave her the name of Netcha because she was rather pretty looking and very dainty. Netcha means pretty. She was, at that time, she must have been about, I think maybe about 21.
Had 3 children?
No, she had no family at that time.
Was married to
Lou.
Lou. And they lived outside the
Well,
house?
she must have, wait a minute, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She must have, because she must have had children, but I don't know how many at that time. It wasn't very many because the family, they were all married close together, following one another.
Okay.
She made that dress herself.
Mm-hmm.
And
Who's that?
that's myself.
How old were you?
I must have been somewhere about, I would say 19 years of age.
When you were living at home?
Yes.
Okay. You began to send it.
That's my brother Alfred.
What was his name? And
Alphonse was the name that he was christened by in Belgium.
Was he married?
And he was married to Julia Cayley.
And how many children did he have?
I don't remember at that time.
They were all girls, though.
Yes. I'll just say the number of family, there's three girls.
Yeah, all right.
That's my father. And he must have been, I would say, in his late 40s.
Is he contractor?
Yes. Maybe a little bit of miss. I think he was a little closer to about 43 because Mother was about 42 at that time. He was a contractor and made concrete blocks for buildings when we lived on Archer Avenue, when he retired from the cooperage business.
Okay.
That's my mother. She was about 42 at that time. And her maiden name was Maria Dum. And that's my brother Frank. And he married Ann Purtell, little Irish girl. And that's my sister Angelina. And she married Robert Anier.
Okay, go ahead.
That's my godmother, and her name was Matilda.
Her last name?